thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 3, Frequently Asked Questions, from Master Mason Educational Proficiency Manual. Part 3, Frequently Asked Questions. What is the composite of the Grand Lodge of Virginia and who has a vote? The Grand Lodge of Virginia is composed of the Grand Master of Masons in Virginia, who has one vote, and, in case of a tie, a second vote. The Deputy Grand Master, who has one vote, and the Grand Wardens, the Grand Treasurer, the Grand Secretary, and the Grand Deacons, who collectively have one vote. The past Grand Masters, who each have one vote, and the past Deputy Grand Masters and the past Grand Wardens, who collectively have one vote. The representatives of the subordinate lodges, with each lodge having one vote. The District Deputy Grand Masters, who collectively have one vote. The past Masters of subordinate lodges, not included in above classifications, who collectively have one vote. When does the Grand Lodge meet and what happens at its meetings? The Grand Lodge meets each year in November at the sessions of Grand Lodge, called the Grand Annual Communication. The Grand Master provides a report on his stewardship of the fraternity and receives detailed reports from the various Grand Lodge committees on the state of the craft. There also is discussion of and voting on proposed legislation that, if adopted, becomes a part of Masonic law and is included in the Methodical Digest. The election and installation of Grand Lodge officers, and a number of social events. Before Grand Lodge begins, the Committee on Work, which is responsible for the ritual, exemplifies the ritual of the third degrees as conferred in our grand jurisdiction. Who can attend Grand Lodge meetings? All Master Masons are encouraged to attend Grand Lodge meetings. Those attendees who are not voting members can observe what occurs at the tiled meetings of the Grand Lodge. Non-Masons are welcome at the social events. Who is a Grand Lodge delegate? The Worshipful Master, Senior, and Junior Wardens are entitled to represent their lodge. If none of them are present, their proxies, elected by the lodges, represent them. Who are the officers of the Grand Lodge? The elected officers are the Grand Master of Masons in Virginia, the Deputy Grand Master, the Grand Senior and Grand Junior Wardens, the Grand Treasurer, Grand Secretary, and the Grand Senior and Grand Junior Deacons. The Grand Master also appoints several Grand Lodge officers, including the Grand Marshal, Grand Chaplain, Grand Lecturer, Grand Provost, and Grand Tyler. The names, addresses, and the phone numbers of Grand Lodge officers are listed in publications of the Grand Lodge, including the annual proceedings, and in an annual directory. How does one become a Grand Lodge officer? The Grand Master and Deputy Grand Master are always in nomination for the office of Grand Master, and any member of Grand Lodge can make additional nominations. The Grand Master-elect nominates each of the other elected Grand Lodge officers, and again, any members of Grand Lodge can make additional nominations. The Grand Deacons, the Grand Wardens, and the Deputy Grand Master are known as the progressive line officers because, most often, they will be elected each year and advance from Grand Junior Deacon to Grand Master in 6 years. The Grand Master-elect also designates the appointed Grand Lodge officers. What are the powers of the Grand Master? The Grand Master presides during any session of the Grand Lodge and controls the conduct of all business coming before the Grand Lodge. When the Grand Lodge is not in session, all of its powers are vested in the Grand Master, who has the power to suspend any lodge or resolution enacted by the Grand Lodge, issue dispensations for the formation of new lodges, empower subordinate lodges to set aside the requirements of their bylaws, and for other purposes, appoint commissions, make decisions, and perform all other acts which are imposed upon his office by law, custom, or usage. He reports all of his official acts to the Grand Lodge in his annual address, which is referred to the Committee of Past Grand Masters. That committee makes recommendations to the Grand Lodge on the decisions and rulings of the Grand Master, and, if adopted by Grand Lodge, become part of Masonic law, are codified and placed in the Methodical Digest. The disapproval of any decision or ruling of the Grand Master does not affect the particular act, but governs only its future application. Who are District Deputy Grand Masters? They are the personal representatives of the Grand Master in their respective Masonic district. The lodges in the district recommend a candidate for District Deputy Grand Master to the Grand Master, but the decision to appoint rests solely with the Grand Master. The District Deputy observes the functioning of the lodges, enforces conformity to the work and compliance with the laws of the Grand Lodge, and reports irregularities to the Grand Master. Lodge officers can request advice from the District Deputy Grand Master and dispensations to change the date or time of a lodge meeting. Where is the Grand Lodge building located, and what does the Grand Lodge staff do? The Grand Lodge building is located in Richmond, on the grounds of the Masonic Home of Virginia. The building contains the office of the Grand Master and his apartment, the office of the Grand Secretary and his staff, a conference room, and a museum and a library, to which all Masons are encouraged to visit. The Grand Lodge staff maintain the records and provides assistance to the Grand Master, the Grand Lodge officers, and all of the lodges. What is the Masonic Home of Virginia? The Masonic Home of Virginia is a full-service facility with cottages and rooms for independent living, assisted living quarters, and a care center. It is located on 9 Mile Road in Richmond. This wonderful retirement community is supported and maintained by the Masons of Virginia. It provides a home for our older Masons, their wives, and widows. It is primarily for Masons who cannot afford other living arrangements, but also accepts paying residents. How are new lodges started, and how can they be ended? When a group of Masons wishes to form a new lodge, they apply to the Grand Master for a dispensation to permit them to form and work temporarily. If, after a period, the new lodge has met certain standards, the Grand Lodge may grant it a charter. The Grand Lodge or the Grand Master can revoke the charter of a lodge, and the lodge then ceases to exist. In addition, a majority of members at a meeting may vote to surrender their charter. How are lodge officers selected? The Worshipful Master conducts annual elections by voice vote, or, if there is more than one candidate for an office, by secret written ballot. The Worshipful Master nominates a brother for the office, or Worshipful Master, and the Worshipful Master-elect makes the first nomination for the other elected officers. As in the case of Grand Lodge, any member of the lodge can make additional nominations. What are stated and called communications? The stated communication is the regularly scheduled meeting of the lodge provided or stated in its bylaws. Every lodge is required to have, if practicable, at least one stated communication a month, and the location, day, date, and time cannot be changed without Grand Lodge permission. In case of scheduling conflicts or when weather conditions require, the meeting can be changed by obtaining a dispensation from the District Deputy Grand Master. The business of the lodge is usually conducted at these meetings, although degrees also can be conferred. The Worshipful Master also is free to have special meetings, known as called communications. Because they are called by the Worshipful Master, a dispensation from Grand Lodge is not necessary for called meetings, but the brethren must be given timely notice, except for funerals. No stated or special lodge meetings are allowed when the Grand Lodge is assembled for its grand annual communication. Are Robert Rules of Order used in Masonic lodges? We do not follow Robert's Rules of Order under Masonic law. The worshipful master rules and governs his lodge, controls the order of business, and may refuse to entertain any proposition he deems not in the best interest of the lodge. The decisions of a worshipful master can only be appealed through the district deputy grand master to the grand master. What are the rights of a master mason? The rights of a master mason are Masonic relief, Masonic visitation, and Masonic burial. What is Masonic relief? Every Mason is obligated to do whatever he can to assist his Masonic brethren when they are in need. Each individual, lodge, and Grand Lodge may determine what is appropriate to do in each case. Widows and orphans of Freemasons also are permitted to apply for Masonic relief. What are the rules about Masonic visitation? A Master Mason in good standing is permitted to visit other lodges, so long as the lodge to which he belongs is under the jurisdiction of a Grand Lodge that is recognized by our Grand Lodge at the time of the visit. If the visitor has not sat in that lodge before, or if he is not known to and cannot be vouched for by one of the members or admitted visitors of the lodge he is visiting, the worshipful master will appoint an examination committee. The dues card of the visitor is checked to determine that he is in good standing in a recognized lodge. He will be asked to repeat the Tyler's oath and otherwise to provide his Masonic qualifications. There is no fixed examination, but the committee must satisfy itself that the visitor is a Master Mason in good standing. A Mason should arrive early enough to allow time for these procedures to be followed, and should give advance notice to the worshipful master of a planned visit, if that is possible. Can a visitor be barred from a lodge meeting? If a member of the lodge objects to any visitor attending that lodge meeting, the worshipful master must not permit the visitor to attend that lodge meeting. There are exceptions. A Grand Lodge officer or the district deputy grand master cannot be barred from any lodge meeting. And if a worshipful master believes that a member of the lodge is objecting to a visitor because of race, the objection will not be honored. Can a Mason resign from his lodge or join another lodge? If you no longer wish to hold membership in a particular lodge, you can resign by asking for a demit, a document certifying that at the time you left the lodge you were in good standing financially and not under Masonic charges. A demitted Mason can apply to rejoin that or any other lodge, but must be accepted by unanimous ballot of the lodge. A member of one lodge can join another without demitting from the first lodge. He simply applies for affiliation or membership in the other lodge, and if accepted, he becomes a member of that lodge. Virginia permits plural memberships, but in some Grand Lodges, Masons may be allowed to belong to only one or two lodges. What are Masonic funeral services? Each Masonic grand jurisdiction has a ritual that is used when the brethren pay their respects for a Mason who has died. This ritual can be performed in public, either at the funeral home or at the gravesite. It is up to the family of the departed Mason to request a lodge to perform a Masonic funeral service, so each Mason should inform his family ahead of time if he would like them to make this request after his death. What are the responsibilities of a Master Mason? To live an exemplary life in accordance with the high moral principles of the fraternity is the best means by which we can discharge our responsibilities to ourselves and to our families, and our individual responsibilities to our lodge and to Freemasonry in general. Every Mason is an ambassador for the fraternity and should act in a manner as to impress all with whom he comes in contact so they form a favorable opinion of the craft. What is a Mason's responsibility for lodge attendance? Although there is not a minimum attendance requirement nor a penalty for absence from meetings, each Mason should assist his lodge by attending its meetings and supporting its projects and activities. As one attends lodge events, he increasingly benefits from the fellowship, which is so much a part of Freemasonry. What is your responsibility as a voucher on a petition? First, you should not sign a petition unless you are well acquainted with the petitioner and know him to be of good moral character. Second, you should make certain he understands what Freemasonry is all about and that it is the right organization for him. The voucher should inform the petitioner about the obligations we undertake to help each other and the time commitments of active membership, including lodge meetings, serving on committees, and engaging in worthwhile projects. How does the lodge ballot on new members? There is a strict ritual about how lodge members vote on potential new members. There must be at least a month between when the petition is first read to the lodge and when it is voted upon. During this time, the investigating committee would have visited the petitioner and his family and be prepared to make its recommendation. After the petition is read for the second time in lodge, each member of the lodge present must vote yes or no by placing a white ball or a black cube in the ballot box. If one black cube is cast, the petitioner is rejected. Balloting in lodge on petitions is secret under Masonic law. You must not discuss how you voted, and no one shall ask you to reveal or discuss how you voted. How is voting done on other issues in lodge? Apart from membership issues, voting for officers or to spend money is usually done by a voice vote or show of hands. What dues or other financial obligations does a Mason have? Except for honorary members elected by the lodge and 50-year members, every brother must pay dues in each lodge to which he belongs, so as long as he is financially able. If a member fails to pay dues, he may be suspended. If he is suspended in one lodge, he is automatically suspended in all of them, and in any other Masonic body to which he belongs. If you are financially difficult, you should speak privately to the worshipful master or secretary, and your dues may be waived. In addition, given the charitable nature of our fraternity, you should provide such voluntary support as you can for the Masonic Home of Virginia and other worthy projects, and assist individual Masons and their families who may be in need. What is lifetime membership in perpetuity? Brethren are encouraged to take care of their dues obligation in a lodge by purchasing a life membership in perpetuity, LMIP. After they have paid their current year dues, they pay into the LMIP fund 16 times those current dues. That fully satisfies their dues obligation to that lodge for the rest of their lives. And they also help their lodge because this income stream will continue to support the lodge beyond their lifetime. Can a Mason be suspended or expelled? Aside from suspension for non-payment of dues, a Mason found guilty of un-Masonic conduct can be reprimanded, suspended, or expelled. The Grand Lodge has rules to be followed to handle allegations of un-Masonic conduct and to conduct trials on these charges in a manner that is fair to all concerned. It is very important that Masons understand that everyone is assumed to be innocent until evidence is presented. The accused has a fair opportunity to defend himself, and an objective decision is reached. What is meant by recognized and unrecognized Grand Lodges by regular and irregular Masons, and by clandestine lodges and Masons? Each Grand Lodge chooses whether or not to recognize other grand jurisdictions. It also appoints a representative from the recognized Grand Lodge to its Grand Lodge, and our representative brethren are free to visit lodges in a sister recognized grand jurisdiction. Regular Masonry is generally considered to mean those Masonic groups that support the same fundamental principles as our Grand Lodge. Clandestine Masons and lodges are those who do not have a charter from any recognized Grand Lodge. The terms recognized and unrecognized, regular or irregular, and clandestine or not clandestine are not interchangeable. For example, an unrecognized Grand Lodge might be regular and not clandestine, but simply not be recognized by our Grand Lodge because it is new or because it has not requested recognition from our Grand Lodge. A lodge that has its charter revoked and continues to meet would be a clandestine lodge. Are there higher degrees than Master Mason? There are additional degrees, for example in the York Rite bodies, the Royal Arch and Commandery, and in the Scottish Rite, which confers the 4th to the 32nd degree. Although the brethren get a great deal out of these degrees, they are not considered higher degrees, and no degree is regarded as more important than the degree of Master Mason. What are appended bodies? Once you are a Master Mason, you are eligible to join appended bodies, that is, other groups that require Masonic membership. These include the Scottish Rite, York Rite, Shrine, Tall Cedars of Lebanon, and others. What are the purposes of the appended bodies? Each appended body teaches moral and philosophical lessons by conferring degrees on their candidates. The lessons taught by the body are the central theme of its objectives. In addition to the lessons taught, each body supports a charity. For example, the Scottish Rite supports childhood language disorder centers and has 2 crippled children's hospitals. The Grand Chapter of Royal Arch Masons supports Alzheimer's programs. The Knights Templar support the Eye Foundation, and the Shrine runs a number of children's hospitals and burn centers. Are there recognized organizations for ladies? Yes, there are organizations such as the Order of the Eastern Star, the Order of Amurath, the White Shrine of Jerusalem, the Ladies' Oriental Shrine, and the Social Order of the Bussion, which, while not connected with Freemasonry, require that the ladies be wives or daughters or relatives of Masons in order to qualify for membership, and that the male members be Masons. Each of these organizations has wonderful activities and does charitable work. Masons are permitted to join all of these groups, but the Bussion. What are Masonic youth groups? There are several organizations for young people that are supported by Freemasonry. In some of them, it is necessary to be related to or to be sponsored by a Mason to join. The International Order of Demolay is the youth organization for young boys aged 12 to 20. The International Order of Job's Daughters and the Order of Rainbow for girls are Masonic-supported organizations for young girls aged 10 to 20. By supporting these groups, Masons help provide our youth with important values of morality, and from the ranks of Demolay, we may find future Masons. What is Prince Hall Freemasonry? In 1775, an African American named Prince Hall, together with 14 other African Americans, were made Master Masons in a lodge in Boston that was operating under a charter issued by the Grand Lodge of Ireland. In 1784, Prince Hall and his brethren received a charter issued by the Grand Lodge of England, and later, in memory of their founder, many of the Masonic lodges for African Americans came to be known as Prince Hall Masonry. With some ups and downs during the years, Freemasonry for these men has prospered in the United States, and there are Prince Hall Grand Lodges and Prince Hall Lodges in all parts of our country and in some foreign countries too. From the perspective of Prince Hall Masonry, there also are recognized and unrecognized Grand Lodges, regular and irregular Masons, and clandestine lodges and Masons. Starting in 1989, many U.S. Grand Lodges started recognizing various Prince Hall Grand Lodges and allowing Masons to visit each other's lodges. Today, a majority of Grand Lodges in the United States recognizes Prince Hall Masonry, as do Grand Lodges in Canada, England, and other countries. The Grand Lodge of Virginia recognizes the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Virginia, Free and Accepted Masons, Incorporated. Are there similarities between our lodges and Prince Hall lodges? Yes, they confer the degrees in almost the same way we do. They have similar lodge arrangements and officers, Grand Lodges, and appended bodies. What is meant by profane? This is an archaic term used to refer to someone who was not a Mason. The preferred term is simply non-Mason. What are some books a Master Mason can read to learn more about Freemasonry? The Grand Design by Wallace McLeod, published in 1991. Let Your Work Become Your Mark by Stuart W. Miner, published in 1986. The Master's Book by Carl H. Claudy, published in 1935. Key to Freemasonry's Growth by Alan E. Roberts, published in 1969. 101 Plus Ways to Improve Interest and Attendance in Your Masonic Lodge by the Masonic Renewal Committee of North America, Incorporated. Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry? By Art D. Hoyos and S. Brent Morris. Second edition, published in 1997. A Pilgrim's Path, One Man's Road to the Masonic Temple by John J. Robertson, published 1993. Cole's Masonic Encyclopedia by Henry W. Cole, second edition by Alan E. Roberts in 1996. Freemasons for Dummies by Christopher Holdat, published in 2005. Living the Enlightenment, Freemasonry and Politics in 18th Century Europe by Margaret C. Jacob, published in 1991. Revolutionary Brotherhood, Freemasonry and the Transformation of the American Social Order, 1730 through 1840 by Stephen Bullock, published in 1996. This list contains only a few of the many good books, pamphlets, and articles on Freemasonry. The 7th edition of the Mentor's Manual of the Grand Lodge of Virginia 2002 in the General Information section lists many other good books organized by Masonic topic. Many lodges have libraries and are a valuable source of information on Freemasonry. Many Grand Lodges have excellent libraries. The Alan E. Roberts Memorial Library of the Grand Lodge of Virginia is located at the Grand Lodge office, 9 Mile Road in Richmond. The Pennsylvania Library is located in the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. The library at the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., and the Lexington Library in Lexington, Massachusetts are among the best Masonic libraries in the world. Masonic labor is purely a labor of love. He who seeks to draw Masonic wages in gold or silver will not be disappointed. The wages of a Mason are earned and paid in their dealings with one another. Sympathy begets sympathy. Kindness begets kindness. Helpfulness begets helpfulness. And these are the wages of a Mason. Benjamin Franklin. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.